What if the Golden State Warriors' all-season silence is actually the calm before the storm that could redefine the entire franchise's destiny? Welcome back to Warriors News Fan Report, where raw truths collide with splashy era passion. Smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so your heart never misses a beat. This is not just another quiet summer update. This feels like the kind of seismic shift Dub Nation has been begging for since Mike Dunleavy took over the reins and fans anxiously awaited his masterstroke, the move that would jolt the Warriors back into true championship contention after a painfully stagnant stretch that saw no contract extensions for Jonathan Kuminga and zero meaningful roster upgrades, leaving that 2-year twilight window of Steph Curry's prime shimmering butt unanswered. Now, imagine for a second a scenario that just a few weeks ago would have felt utterly impossible, like a mirage on the horizon, the Milwaukee Bucks, desperate and reshuffling their deck after Damian Lillard's dreaded Achilles tear in the playoffs, pull off the unthinkable. They waive Dame and stretch out the gargantuan $113 million left on his contract to bring in a new piece, a move that appends the NBA chessboard entirely. Flash forward, less than 48 hours later, and Shams Charania drops a bombshell reporting that Dame is elated, energized even by this decision because it frees him to chase a championship without the suffocating financial dead weight, giving him unprecedented freedom to join the contender of his choice. Now, just 2 months ago, the idea of Dame Lillard slipping in the Golden State's lineup was a pipe dream. A fantasy so far removed from reality that it might as well have been whispered in a dream. The cap space was non-existent. Steph's $60 million annual contract alone loomed like an iron mountain, coupled with Jimmy Butler's recent 2-year extension at a hefty clip in the high 50 millions, and Draymond's $20 million day contract further squeezed the Warriors' financial flexibility. Jonathan Kuminga, who remains unsigned, only adds to the complexity of this delicate cap dance, making the prospect of adding a max-tier star like Lillard both a puzzle and a gamble. Yet, and here's the twist, the narrative has mutated overnight. Now, sources reveal that the Celtics and the Warriors have emerged as the front-runners to court Dame, a revelation that no one saw coming given the cracks in the Warriors' all-season movements, or lack thereof. Boston, with its perennial contention status, is a natural landing spot, but for Dame, the hometown allure of Oakland, that heartbeat of Dub Nation could pull him back to the Bay, adding a raw layer of emotional gravitas that tugs heartstrings deeper than stats and names ever could. But it's the latest leak that's the real game changer. Whispers from insider circles claiming Damian Lillard might accept a minimum contract to join a contender. That reality flips everything on its head. Mike Dunleavy, whose off-season moves have been as quiet as a meditation retreat, has finally received the golden message he's been screaming out for. To get arguably the second-best off-the-dribble shooter in NBA history, behind only Steph Curry himself, and a player who averaged 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists last season despite an Achilles trauma for a minimum contract? That's an absolute heist, a miracle. A new dawn for a Warriors core hungry to reclaim its throne. Of course, the doubters are loud. What about the injuries? Dame can't play at the start of the season, they say. How could an aging 34-year-old guard return from such a significant Achilles injury and still maintain the lightning quickness and precise shooting that define his prime? The harsh whisper of wash crowds the arena for some. But those who watch closely see a different story, one where Dame's shooting off the catch-and movement, hitting 38% from 3, and an electrifying 39% from corner threes, fits seamlessly within the Warriors' championship DNA. The backcourt legacy of Curry and Clay define a generational era of port-shooting sharpshooters. But Dame brings a different element of gravity a pull defenders can't ignore, a way of creating space with the slightest hint of movement that could reimagine the Warriors' spacing and shot creation in ways we haven't seen since peak KD era calculus. At the heart of this is an opportunity that strikes at the very core of what Golden State's future could be. Steph still mesmerizing defenses with that deep splash, Jimmy Butler bringing his unyielding, relentless championship pressure defense. And scoring versatility, Draymond Green anchoring in every evolving defensive framework. All machineed with Dame stepping in as a minimum salary wild card whose presence unlocks staggering lineup possibilities. Imagine a rotation where the Warriors add a much-needed center through trade or free agency, retain Jonathan Kuminga's developing promise, and unleash a lineup with Steph, Dame, Jimmy, and Draymond all firing on cylinders, a team primed for the 2026-2027 season when the contracts start to clear and the front office can go all in on a championship run. This win-now window propelled by the 2-year extension on Butler's contract and Steph's twilight brilliance demands the highest stakes and boldest moves. And adding Dame on a minimum deal is exactly that. Yes, it's a bet on health. On aging gracefully, on a recovery that cinema has yet to fully script. But it's also a bet on elite talent, on gravity, poise, clutch gene, the intangible made tangible. And Mike Dunleavy, who has skipped big fish moves so far this offseason, suddenly faces an inflection point, pass again and risk fading quietly into irrelevance, or take the plunge and rewrite Warriors history by sewing Damian Lillard into the fabric of this squad at a bargain price with upside that could eclipse even the greatest splash moments of the dynasty's past. Moreover, the mysteries remain. Will the financials truly line up? Will Dame sign short-term only to extend again for the 2026 to 2027 home run swing season? How will the integration unfold on the floor with tour de force scorers and elite defenders jostling for roles and touches? Even the fan favorite Jonathan Kuminga's status hangs in the balance with lingering questions about his re-signing. The Warriors appear poised at a crossroads where every decision is magnified, every move charged with championship gravity. The prospect of Al Horford joining in soon could add even more veteran savvy to this mix, complicating but also enriching the roster puzzle. The front office has been quiet, maybe too quiet, but this current domino, the Damian Lillard buyout, followed by his openness to minimum deals, could rewrite the playbook. Could this be the silent pivot that eclipses even the Kevin Durant era? Could Dare Lillard's unorthodox minimum contract signing mark the beginning of a new Warriors renaissance, or fracture the delicate balance and chemistry painstakingly built over these splash-filled decade-plus years? As a lifelong Dub Nation believer, my pulse is racing just writing this because possibilities this wild and electrifying don't come often. They arrive like tidal waves, threatening to either wash away the shore or reshape it forever. The question that reverberates with every shot, every handshake, every front office whisper is this the spark to reignite our dynasty's flames in time for Steph's final prime chapters? Or is it the crack that fractures a legacy still burning bright? Drop your unfiltered takes in the comments. I'll be right there, heart in hand. If you just felt your pulse hit triple digits, imagining Dame Lillard slipping on that blue and gold, do me a favor, fire off your rawest, wildest reaction right now, because this could be the shot in the arm Dub Nation needs, or the fracture that sends us spinning into chaos. Let's not kid ourselves. This isn't just another off-season gambit. This feels like the kind of cliffhanger moment that will have us waking up in the middle of the night, heart beating like the Oracle crowd in 15 yelling splash, but now it's a heavy, urgent what if. What if the Warriors' quiet, almost suspicious silence wasn't a sign of hesitation, but a calculated waiting game, a high-stakes poker face from Dunleavy and Kerr while the entire league holds its breath? Because if Dame actually bolts from Milwaukee on a minimum deal, willingly sacrificing short-term dollars and his own star power for a shot at a title with the Warriors, then we are staring at a seismic dynasty reboot. Yet it's impossible to ignore the tension boiling beneath this. Steph Curry, a man who transformed the very DNA of basketball with his unlimited range and magical handles, now faces the weightiest question of his career. Can the Splash Brothers era morph into the Dame Curry era without fracturing everything that makes us golden? And what about Draymond Green, the emotional heart and sometimes volatile voice of this squad, whose role feels more fluid than ever in a new power balance that suddenly threatens to unmoor the synergy painstakingly built over nearly a decade. Here's the kicker: yesterday's whispers in the locker room were thick with speculation, and some players' expressions betrayed a mix of excitement and unease. Andrew Wiggins, who carried this team through thick playoff storms more times than we can count, sees his role under fresh scrutiny. Does this mean less ball in his hands, fewer seconds to shine, or conversely, a long-awaited partner to lift the scoring burden when the pressure cooker is on? Jonathan Kuminga, the young flame still unsigned, looms over this entire storyline like a question mark with a promise. Can he be the final puzzle piece who develops alongside this star-studded lineup, or is he a casualty of cap constraints and crowded rotations? It's a limbo-filled June in the Bay, the Chase Center echoing not with victory chants, but with the low hum of nerves and anticipation. What if Al Horford, potentially signing on to bring veteran wisdom and calm, becomes the glue or the complexity that tips this fragile balance? And what about the very soul of the Warriors' offense? Dame's lethal pull-up threes and change-of-pace tempo could be the secret sauce Kerr's offense has lacked since Durant's departure, injecting a new style that pairs veteran cool with explosive creativity. But will it integrate or implode? What about the chemistry on the floor when Steph's gravity pulls one way and Dame's unpredictable burst pulls another, forcing opponents to make impossible decisions? Could this actually make the Warriors untouchable, or does it risk confusion and clashing egos? The doubters are loud and aggressive, painting Dame as a risk barely worth the reward. A 34-year-old Achilles injury? Minimum contract? This isn't the Dame we remember. Sure, skepticism is necessary, but as someone who stared down every false end in the seasons when injuries decimated us, when talent was stolen by time, or warred with front office silence, I also know this: greatness doesn't ask permission. It smashes through doubts and carries a city on its back. This is a man who carried Portland through heartbreak year after year. Now put him in the Golden State system, surrounded by championship vets and an ardent fan base ready to erupt at the first sign of lightning. It's not a question of just basketball. It's a climatic narrative of redemption, legacy, and rebirth. Mike Dunleavy, whose reputation this offseason hung in the balance, suddenly finds himself with a masterstroke. Or a nightmare. He has the chance to draft an era with one bold signature, or to risk the subtle implosion of a core that's balled together through sheer force of will for years. Steph's twilight isn't a quiet fade. It's a blazing finale that demands all-in bets on greatness. That's what Dame signing minimum represents. A pornographic gamble on chasing glory over cash. And as previews of training camp leak, behind closed doors tensions whisper stories of heated debates about shot usage and defensive assignments. Kerr and his coaching staff are not just juggling plays, they're balancing egos, legacies, and a precarious future tethered by thin golden threads. Imagine the emotional weight on Steph, who's carried this city and franchise through tears, celebrations, injuries, and triumphs, now watching as a superstar peer tries on the Warriors. Colors, possibly rewiring the offense that has been his signature for over a decade. The pressure is Herculean, the stakes biblical. On top of it all, the fans dub nation we clutch our jerseys. Tweaking our loyalty seems tighter because the outcome of this gamble feels like a personal life or death. This is the kind of upheaval that could reignite the dynasty's flame, or scatter sparks into oblivion. And what about the ripple effects? The ripple that hits the league's hierarchy and rivalry's Celtics, waiting in the wings, jaws dropping as Golden State plays a late-season trap card. Does this make the Warriors unstoppable again, or sow seeds for a fractured locker room where chemistry becomes the ultimate casualty? As someone who's bled blue and gold, who sat through every toxic rumor, every broken trade prospect, every missed buzzer beater, and watched the dynasty stretch from oblivion to all-time greatness, I can feel it. Isn't it true this moment is raw, fragile, poised on the edge of either intoxicating resurrection or heartbreaking collapse? There's no middle ground here. only a full-throttle leap into the unknown and a prayer that Dame Lillard's arrival will inflame the spirit, urgency, and unmatched skill that once defined the Warriors' supremacy. So, I'm throwing down the gauntlet. Now is the time to rally. No more passive scrolling or quiet acceptance. Drop your hottest, no-filter takes below. Is Dame the missing gear that shifts this machine into overdrive, or the wild card that breaks this dynasty's delicate clockwork? Do you trust Dunleavy's quiet brilliance, or fear he's got one too many aces up his sleeve? Can Steph's final chapters be rewritten in the splash of Dame's clutch fire? Or does this gamble risk rewriting history into a cautionary tale? I'll be in the trenches of the comments, heart ablaze, and ready to throw down with every fiery belief and raw doubt. You bring the passion, I'll bring the receipts. Because this offseason isn't just a story, it's the next chapter of our soul. The question remains, are we witnessing the rebirth of a legend, or the twilight that forever shifts the king's crown?